Whenever a conflict like this kicks off, the first thing everyone asks is, why? But when you're talking about the United States and Iran, maybe the better question is, what's the actual endgame here? So today, we're going to try and unpack the strategy, the public statements, and what could possibly happen next in a conflict that has the entire world on edge.
All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We're breaking it down into 4 key parts. First, we'll look at the economic shock that really got the ball rolling. Then, we'll get into the, let's call it, mixed messaging coming from the top. Third, we'll talk about the hard military facts on the ground. And finally, we'll explore the 3 most likely ways this whole thing could end.
Before any major shots were fired on a battlefield, the first real battle in this conflict took place on the global markets, and it all boiled down to the price of a single, incredibly important thing: oil.
So right after we got reports that Israel had attacked some of Iran's oil facilities, the price of oil just went through the roof. It hit $116 a barrel. And look, a number like that, it's way more than just a headline. For the global economy, that's a full-blown code red.
So why all the panic? Well, a price that high brings back the ghost of something called stagflation. Imagine this. Your economy gets hit with a nasty 1-2 punch. The price of everything is skyrocketing, that's inflation, but at the very same time, the economy is actually shrinking. It's a toxic combination we haven't really seen since the oil crisis back in the 70s, and it is pretty much the worst-case scenario for any government.
Okay, so you've got the markets just absolutely tanking, and President Trump steps up for a press conference. And what we saw was, well, it was a masterclass in messaging. It was confusing, it was contradictory, but it was also incredibly revealing, and it had one very, very clear goal: stop the panic.
And I mean, wow, it worked. It just goes to show you the power of his words, right? The price just plummeted from that scary $116 high all the way down to $84 a barrel. That is a massive, immediate market correction based entirely on what he said.
So what exactly did he say to make that happen? He basically declared victory. He said the mission was a near-total success, a statement that was perfectly designed to tell the world, hey, calm down, the conflict is contained, the worst is already behind us.
But here's where it gets really interesting. It's not about what was said, but what wasn't said. Officials laid out the military goals you see right there on the left: take out Iran's missile program, destroy their nuclear program. But look at what's missing on the right: regime change. For years, that's been the stated ultimate goal. The fact that it was suddenly gone from the conversation, that was deafening, and it might just be the biggest clue to what the real strategy is here.
Okay, but let's pivot for a second. Let's move away from the press conferences and talk about the actual reality on the ground. Because, despite all the confident talk, the military situation makes a clean, decisive win, well, pretty much impossible.
And honestly, a huge part of this comes down to simple geography. Take a look at the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest point, it's only about 40 kilometers wide. That means Iran can easily, from its own coastline, hit any oil tanker passing through with drones or missiles. You can send patrol boats, you can escort ships, but you can never, ever guarantee their safety. For Iran, just the threat of an attack is almost as powerful as an actual attack.
And this, right here, is the perfect illustration of Iran's real strength. It's not about winning some conventional head-to-head war with the US. It's about something called asymmetry. They fight a different kind of war. Their regime has proven it can survive a lot. They've got these underground cities just packed with weapons. Their Revolutionary Guard is highly motivated and decentralized, which means taking out one leader doesn't end the fight. Their real power is in their ability to take a punch, stay standing, and then hit back with 1,000 painful, unpredictable little cuts.
So, okay, we've got this really messy military picture and these confusing political messages. Where does all this lead? Well, it seems like there are really only 3 main ways this whole thing could play out.
Let's just walk through these possible endgames one by one. We'll start with what's most probable and then move to the real long shots. All right, scenario 1. This is the one a lot of analysts think is the most likely. You could call it a Pyrrhic victory. The US goes in, damages Iran's military capabilities, Trump declares it a historic victory, and then pulls everyone out. The Iranian regime is left beaten up, sure, but still in power. And for them, just surviving an attack from a superpower is, in itself, a huge win. Then you've got scenario 2. The US packs up and heads home, but its most important ally in the region doesn't. Israel sees Iran as a genuine existential threat. They might just decide the job isn't done,
and they could continue the fight on their own. And that would lead to a much longer, even more unpredictable war.
And that brings us to the final scenario, the big one that's been talked about for years but is just so improbable: the actual collapse of the Iranian regime. I mean, history shows us the governments almost never fall because of bombing campaigns alone, unless you have a full-scale ground invasion or a serious split within Iran's own military. This one stays a very, very distant possibility.
And that really leaves us with a tough final question, doesn't it? In a conflict where a clean, clear victory seems completely off the table, the real strategic game isn't about figuring out how to win. It's about choosing which version of losing you can live with.